The heat of Meereen's late afternoon clung to Daenerys Targaryen like a silken shroud as she walked the mosaic path toward the audience pavilion overlooking the Skahazaden. Every stone beneath her sandals glittered, tiles depicting ships under full sail, dragons coiled about harps, and a three-headed beast devouring a golden crown. They had been laid centuries ago by Giscari victors celebrating one conquest or another, but today the patterns felt like omens whispered at her feet. The pavilion's latticework screens through shifting shadows that stuttered across the sandy floor, dappled by the river's wind. Within, Ser Barristan awaited her, armor polished bright, white cloak trailing. Beyond him knelt 2 rows of Sellsword captains in heavy leather and gilt mail. Each commanded a cohort of the Golden Company. Gold links dangled from their gorgets, catching the dying light. Yet Daenerys saw the differences. Their sigils painted upon kettle helms, the jagged scars of old Free City's wars, the sullen tension of men who had sworn never to bend the knee to any monarch save a Blackfire pretender. Now they bowed to her. Daenerys halted at the threshold, Drogon's shadow sweeping overhead as the dragon cut a lazy circle, wings threshing air that smelled of river silt and char. Behind her strode Missandei with parchment and quills, Grey Worm in pale linen, and Daario, lounging as though at a feast rather than the edge of a gamble. His hand rested on the curve of his arak, its turquoise pommel flashing. Ser Barristan's voice rang clear. Her Grace, Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, first of her name. Spare the titles, Ser Grandfather, she murmured. They know who stands before them. She advanced until she could meet each pair of eyes. They were all older than she by a decade or 3, but none dared flinch. This shall be plain. You have come to sell me your swords. I would buy more than that. I would buy your oaths, your hearts, your past. A hush. Outside, the great bronze harps of Meereen began their twilight tolling. The man at the head of the captains rose. Harry Strickland, your grace, he said, his Giscari accent softened by years in Tyroshi brothels. He removed his helm, revealing a narrow face, graying beard, and startlingly gentle eyes. The Golden Company is sworn to fight for coin, but also for a dream. Our founders vowed to win back what was lost to them across the narrow sea. You are not a Blackfire, yet you are the blood of old Valyria. We remember Bittersteel's words. Our day will come. Perhaps it has. Daenerys felt Drogon's presence on the edge of her mind, a flare of heat and hunger. She drew strength from it. I will give you more than coin. Westeros is broken. 7 kingdoms kneel to a usurper's whelp. Ride with me, and you will cross the sea not as Sellswords but as the steel that hammers a new realm into righteousness. And our price? Asked a Volantene with an ivory eye patch. 10,000 gold dragons upon embarking. 10,000 more when King's Landing falls. Land, rich land in perpetuity. Your banners will fly beside mine. Your names will ring in annals. And your children will grow in fields you watered with valor, not coin. Strickland glanced along the line. A murmur rippled. Coins could be spent. Land endured. Ser Barristan stepped forward. Her Grace keeps her promises. Daario laughed under his breath. She does, he drawled. And she punishes those who break theirs. One by one, the captains knelt. Sunlight flashed on sigil-stamped helms as they bent their heads. Strickland touched his brow to the floorboards. We give you our company, your grace. 10,000 strong, armored and mounted, with 40 elephants, 300 war horses, and engines enough to topple any wall outside the Vale. We will cross the sea for you. Daenerys's pulse thundered. Viserys had once spoken of buying the Golden Company. Visions fever-bright in Pento's wine halls. But madness had devoured his every coin. Now, under her command, the Sellswords would fulfill a prophecy 17 years thwarted. She extended her hand. Strickland drew a dagger from his belt, kissed the blade, and pressed its edge to his palm. Blood welled, dark and quick. Daenerys mirrored the motion. When their cuts met, scarlet mingled. The old vow is broken, she declared. A new dragon mounts the wind. Night cloaked Meereen in lavender gloom. From the terrace of the Great Pyramid, Daenerys watched torches flicker in the besiegers' camps. Though the Yunkai remained, their hearts were ash. Word of her pact with the Golden Company had raced through the lines like wildfire. Across the river, siege engines that had hurled corpses days earlier now lay silent. The Harpy banners wilted. She sipped watered wine. Will they break? Yunkai is not famed for bravery, Ser Barristan said, but their masters count coin. If they believe you are bound for Westeros, they may attempt to strike before you sail. That is their only chance. She gazed eastward where the indomitable flagship of the Golden Company rode at anchor, a sleek cog painted striped black and gold. Beyond her, a forest of masts bobbed. Pentoshi grain ships hired by Hisdar's treasurers before his death, Volantine triremes seized by her fleet, and the 3 great warships captured in Astapor. They were not yet enough. But Illyrio Mopatis had pledged 40 hulks, and Karth had sent negotiation envoys with talk of Myrish carracks for hire. Missandei approached, scrolls in her arms. Letters from Lord Tyrion in Volantis, your grace. He says he has sent agents to the Windblown and the Company of the Cat, and the Iron Bank has dispatched an envoy to treat with you in person. Iron Bank. Daenerys smiled wryly. Perhaps they fear I will default on debts I have never signed. Grey Worm emerged from the stair behind. Unsullied, stand ready, he said. No slave's blood shall bar your path to sea. She touched his shoulder. Tomorrow the captains of the Golden Company feast with me. I will name them brothers to the Unsullied, and to my freedmen. Let no man say I wage war with slaves. Grey Worm's dark eyes flickered. Blood rides with you. Freedom rides also. Drogon roared somewhere aloft, a booming thunderclap that scattered gulls from the mastheads. His siblings answered, wings beating the night with distant hurricane gusts. Daenerys drew a breath, tasting salt carried from the mouth of the river, the sea calling her home at last. 2 weeks later, the armada unfurled across green-blue water under a sweltering sun. Drogon, Regal, and Viserion soared on updrafts, their shadows skating over decks below. Enslaved oarsmen no longer rowed the great hulls. Daenerys had freed them, hiring Myrinese fishermen to man the sweeps for coin. If the freedmen of Slaver's Bay wished to follow her to Westeros, she would feed and pay them. If they chose to remain, she left them garrisons of Unsullied and a chartered council elected by lot. On the Indomitable's quarterdeck, Harry Strickland leaned on the rail, his cloak snapping. Below, elephants bellowed, disquieted by the roll. Their mahouts murmured in summer tongue, patting gray flanks thick with tar toward salt. Crates of gold-plated barding rattled, chains clinking like wind chimes. Daenerys studied the horizon. The stepstones lay ahead, jagged, pirate-ridden. She would hug the coast to Tarth, then strike west to Storm's End. Griffins roost there historically, but Storm's End was little garrisoned these days, her spies said. Stannis Baratheon had marched north, leaving only old castellans and boys. Yet fists clenched in her belly at the thought of Stannis, a king of storms and iron, seasoned by war. If he yet lived, he would contest her claim. She turned. Tyrion sat in the shadow of the mizzen sail, quill dancing over parchment despite the sway. He recorded stores, troop numbers, draft of each vessel, endless columns of sums. When she approached, he looked up, ink smudged on his thumb. How goes it? I have discovered, he said, that elephants eat thrice what ship's rats do, but supply less meat when salted. If you plan to starve the 7 kingdoms into submission, dragons remain more efficient. He gestured at the taut curve of Drogon's wing far above. Daenerys smiled wearily. How long to Storm's End? With fair winds, 8 days. If the gods spit upon us, 12. If your captains stop to raid Lyseni pleasure barges, I refuse to reckon. She leaned on the rail beside him. Did you ever believe your life would bring you here? An exile returning with dragons. Life, Tyrion mused, makes mummers of us all. He squinted at the glittering sea. Yet beware, the 7 kingdoms have learned to fear magic. Your father's wildfire still haunts the ruins of King's Landing. Half the city smells it on hot days. 3 dragons above the Blackwater will wake old ghosts. Let them wake. Let the people remember the true blood that forged the Iron Throne. Tyrion's laugh was soft. Just so. But remember, Grace, ghosts are fickle allies. They passed the Redwine Straits under the cover of fog, sails reefed. On the horizon, Arbor wine ships hove to, suspicious of so vast a fleet yet unwilling to challenge it. Daenerys ordered no pursuit. She would need the Arbor's fruit in days to come. At dawn on the 10th day, a storm wall loomed. Purple clouds towered, every bolt of lightning a spidery clasp fastening sea to sky. The fleet scattered. Ships dove for the lee of gnarled islands where pirate nests glowered through spray. Yet the Indomitable could not outrun the gale. Waves the height of pyramid steps slammed her hull, masts groaning like dying horses. Daenerys felt the deck cant beneath her and braced as salt sluiced across planks. Drogon shrieked above, wings tilting against the gale. He loved storms. She sensed his savage joy. She sent him a silent command. Stay close. His answering growl cracked thunder louder than the sky. Below, elephants trumpeted in terror, their chains clattering. Strickland barked at men to close gangways, lash everything that rolled. Tyrion clung to a stay, drenched, hair plastered. A wave black as night climbed over the rail, sweeping 3 deckhands from their feet. Grey Worm seized one by the collar, hauling him back. Barristan's cloak snapped as he planted himself by the helm, white hair blown wild. Water crashed again. Then, above the shriek of wind, came another sound, wood-rending. Daenerys spun to see the Storm Dancer, an Astapori galley, foundering as her mainmast sheared away. Men leapt into boiling foam. Smith's anvils clattered loose. She tasted bile. Signal Regal. Tell him to help them. Yet the dragons could only harry the waves. The storm took men and masts alike. That night, by the pale gleam of witchlight phosphorescence, they counted losses. 2 transports sunk, 1 cog crippled. Yet it might have been worse. Ser Barristan bowed his head. The Mother of Mountains spared us. Or the storm wished to sharpen us, Daenerys whispered. When at last the sky cleared, pink dawn spread like a bruise over calm water. Ahead rose Storm's End, a colossal drum tower of pale stone perched on a promontory, waves smashing its face in columns of spray. Its curtain walls coiled inland, buttressed by cliffs pocked with gulls. Banners snapped, a crowned stag on golden field, but only a handful. The castle slept in Garrison's hollow. Daenerys watched from Drogon's back, cold air needling her cheeks. Below, the Golden Company disembarked onto shingle beaches, forming ranks of infantry in shining Burgonet helms. Elephants splashed knee-deep, trumpeting as mahouts urged them into line. Unsullied shields gleamed bronze. She banked Drogon into a slow spiral. Archers along Storm's End's battlements notched arrows, but their numbers were scant. 3 trebuchets trailed dust covers. A horn bellowed. The gates yawned and a single rider emerged, banner of parley fluttering. Daenerys descended in a rush of wings. Drogon's claws tore sod as they landed. Grey Worm strode to her side, spear lowered. The rider halted 10 paces away and removed his helm. A boy no older than 15, freckles across a stubborn jaw. He swallowed, voice thin. Lord Penrose bids parley. He asks why dragons come to Storm's End. Daenerys stepped forward. I come for what is mine. We have no quarrel with dragons, my lady, only with pirates. I am no pirate, she said, but the queen who was promised. Tell Lord Penrose. Open his gates, bend the knee, and Storm's End will keep its lordship. Resist, and my dragons will feast on burning flesh. The boy's knuckles whitened on his reins. Aye. Yes, your grace. He wheeled his horse and galloped back, banner snapping. Drogon's chest vibrated with a growl. The sea wind whipped Daenerys's braid across her shoulders. She breathed brine and smoke. Behind her, Strickland raised a gloved hand. Ranks shifted, pikes lowered. Time seemed to stretch thin as spider silk. Moments beat, gull cries, the hiss of tide, the far clank of chains winding as Storm's End's gatehouse drawbridge began to rise, then halt. A white banner rose atop the drum tower, small as a gull's wing at this distance, but clear. A cheer erupted among the Golden Company. Daenerys exhaled. One castle bloodless, one step closer to the Iron Throne. They established a war council in the Shield Hall beneath the Round Keep, its vaulted ceiling carved with the Baratheon sigil. Maps sprawled across the trestle tables. Westeros in dusty inks, trade roads, river fords, and the thick red lines Tyrion had drawn to indicate supply routes. Tyrion, mug of storm-brown ale in hand, tapped the reach. Highgarden is golden fruit ripening. Lady Olenna grows old. Mace is in Old Town courting maesters. But do not underestimate the Tyrells. Their levies fill fields from Honeyholt to the Mander Mouth. Ser Barristan pointed to Dragonstone. We must secure our ancestral seat. Commands Blackwater Bay. Take it, and King's Landing trembles. Daenerys studied the painted table. Dragonstone called to her. A memory half-remembered of salt winds in swaddling cloth. Yet she felt the pull of the straight road. Ride to the capital, strike hard, end the war before it flowers. Caution, Strickland advised, stroking his beard. The Golden Company thrives on swift decisions, but we know siege work. If you strike King's Landing now, with lions roaring at your heel, you risk 2 foes at once. 3, Tyrion said. Stannis remains at the wall. He will not bend to dragons lightly. Daenerys traced a finger along the Stormland's coast to the Trident's Fork. Melancholy washed through her. Memories not her own. Her brother Rhaegar falling, Robert's warhammer crashing. She shook them off. We split, she decided. Harry, march half your company with elephants and siege carracks to Dragonstone. You shall take Grey Worm and 1,500 Unsullied. Secure the island, clear its coves, and ready its forges. Strickland inclined his head. And the rest? Storm's End will serve as my anvil. I ride for King's Landing with the dragons, remaining unsullied, and your heaviest horse. If Cersei Lannister dares sally, we crush her between dragon fire and dragonstone steel. Tyrion raised an eyebrow. My sister will seek wildfire caches the moment she spies wings. So I must strike before she breathes. Daenerys's voice was steel. Barristan bowed. As your grace commands, we shall ready at first light. Later, standing alone upon the rampart, Daenerys gazed toward the capital she had never seen. A crescent moon skimmed the sea, silver and sharp. Drogon settled behind her, talons grinding stone. She leaned into his heat. Father, she whispered into the wind. I come to mend what you broke. The sea answered with a hush like thousand-fold sighs. They rode west at dawn. The King's Road unfurled through wind-bent grasses. Hoarfrost silvered every blade, though it was but late summer. Unsullied marched in perfect cadence, spears upright like a forest of black pines. Golden Company outriders scouted ahead. Mounted on western destriers they had long coveted yet never ridden upon Westeros soil. Every hoofbeat seemed to drum an old vow, our day will come. Villages along the Stormlands heeded the dragon silhouettes and flew white banners before the first trumpet. Daenerys allowed no pillage. She paid for barley, fodder, and salted pork with gold dragons struck in Meereen, the high Valyrian script glinting unfamiliar in peasant palms. Some fell to their knees, naming her Mysa Reborn. Others stared, mouths agape, as elephants lumbered by. Word raced ahead of them. The Dragon Queen marches, 3 monsters of fire at her side, 1,000 eunuch spearmen like bronze ghosts, and Sellsword said to wield the golden thunder of Bittersteel's wrath. She felt rumor ripen like summer fruit, sweet now, soon to burst. By the 3rd day, a column of smoke rose on the horizon. Tyrion spurred to her side. Small folk fleeing north report Lannister outriders burning grain stores. They aim to deny us forage. Daenerys narrowed her eyes. So the lion shows claws at last. She sent Regal and Viserion aloft. They returned as dusk bled purple across the sky, talons stained soot. The dragons had found a Lannister camp and left only melted shields. Yet tens of thousands more lions prowled between here and the capital. Outside Hayford, scouts discovered a scorched field sown with caltrops. 3 elephants limped, feet bloody. Daenerys knelt, stroking a wrinkled trunk while the beast shuddered in pain. She thought of children who would starve if harvests burned. A rage cold as black ice crept into her veins. That night she summoned her captains. "No more slow bleed," she said. "We march before first light, break their lines, and reach Blackwater rush by moonrise. We cannot allow Cersei another day's preparation." Strickland nodded grimly. Tyrion stared into the fire, sparks dancing in his dark eyes. "You know your sister," she said. "Tell me how she thinks." "She thinks like a cornered lioness," he replied. "She will scorch earth, drown cities, and poison wells before surrender. Expect wildfire beneath every cobble, traitors in every alcove." Daenerys touched his shoulder. "Then I shall fly above the cobbles." "And if she aims scorpions at your dragons?"
I aim dragonfjer er her skorpions.
Tyrion's lips twisted in rueful admiration. "You truly are your own mother's daughter." They reached the Blackwater rush as dawn broke gold on water. Across the river, fields smoked where Cersei's men had torched haystacks. But the bridge at Sow's Horn remained intact, 2 towers flanking wooden spans. Lannister spearmen lined the far bank, red cloaks snapping. Daenerys mounted Drogon, armor of shimmering black and crimson fitted to her frame. She rose into a pale sky rippling with dawn breezes. Below, unsullied shields locked, elephants trumpeted, and the Golden Company banners went aloft, their crowned skull above crossed swords beside the 3-headed dragon. Drums boomed. Grey Worm advanced in column, shields overlapping. Pikes bristled. At 100 yards, arrows darkened the air, clattering on unsullied shields. Few found flesh. Drogon screamed. His furnace breath washed across the bridge, wood charring, steel melting. Spearmen scattered, screams carried on ash-laden wind, helms glowing red before softening like wax. The bridge sagged, burst into rolling fire. The Blackwater hissed under molten ruin. Daenerys circled once, Drogon's wings fanning smoke into swirling gyres. When she banked toward the far bank, Lannister lines were already breaking, terror outrunning any orders. Gold and Company cavalry splashed through shallows, unsaddling men with long axes. She landed atop a rise beyond the rush, surveying the route. Grey Worm planted his spear, signaling halt. She forbade unnecessary slaughter. Those who dropped arms were her subjects now. One by one, soldiers knelt, red cloaks muddy. Daenerys' heart hammered steady. Soon the walls of King's Landing would loom, and wildfire might greet her. But she felt Drogon's heat behind her, the steady discipline of Unsullied at her front, and the relentless gold tide of the Golden Company at her flanks. The realm would quake. That afternoon, scouts returned with word. The Lannister host out of Rosby had retreated behind the capital's gates. Gold cloaks patrolled every wall, and scorpions, dozens, jutted from new wooden towers along the ramparts. Tyrion studied the map of King's Landing within Storm's End's captured siege tent, candle stubs like melted teeth upon the board. The city's outer walls are strong but not insurmountable with dragons. Yet Cersei has flooded cellars with wildfire. Break the walls, and green flame may feast on her own people just to deny them to us. Daenerys' jaw flexed. I will not be stayed by fear of what she might burn. It is mercy to end her quickly. Barristan, gauntlet hands on the table's edge, shook his head. Victory purchased with innocence corpses is defeat of the soul, Your Grace. He spoke a familiar warning. She remembered Missandei's gentle eyes, Hisdar's lies, and the children nailed along Meereen's road. Fire could cleanse. Fire could doom. She straightened. Then I will take the city as Aegon did, swiftly with dragons over the Red Keep. If Cersei has wildfire beneath, I will strike only the towers where she hides. Tyrion sighed. I pray she hides alone. A horn sounded outside, the signal of rider approaching. Moments later, A mud-splattered cell's word shoved through. Parley flag from the capital. They bear the sigil of the hand. Daenerys exchanged a look with Tyrion. My brother, he muttered. Or a corpse wearing his hand brooch. Daenerys's pulse quickened. Bring them. On the riverbank near the charred bridge, afternoon sun glared off scarred timbers. Daenerys stood flanked by Grey Worm and Barristan. Across from them rode Jaime Lannister, gold hair loose, golden hand glinting in the light, the other gripping reins. He wore white enameled plate, the cloak of the Kingsguard. At his back, 500 horse in crimson stood silent. Jaime's green eyes flicked to Drogon, perched on a basalt spur, wings half spread. I have come, he said, to hear your terms. My terms are simple. Your sister surrenders. She will be judged for her crimes. The Iron Throne passes to its rightful queen. A wry smile. Which crimes, exactly? A long list. She might provide entertainment before her execution. She will bend the knee, Daenerys repeated. Or die. Jaime's gaze was steady. I believe she would die. Then she shall have that chance. He dismounted, stepping forward. I slew your father. Daenerys tensed. She had known, but the words sounded like a blade drawn anew. And I do not regret it, he said. He would have burned the city to save his rule. I will not see another Targaryen do the same. I am not my father. Then prove it. Jaime's voice softened strangely. Spare the city. Meet Cersei in single combat. Champion against champion. If your champion wins, the city yields. If hers wins, you withdraw. Barristan's face hardened. Your sister's champion would be the mountain that rides. A monster dead in all but muscle. And yours? Jaime asked. Barristan's fist closed. Myself. Daenerys studied the Kingslayer. He had killed the Mad King yet guarded his children. He spoke as a man desperate to salvage ruins. But single combat risked everything on the point of one blade, ignoring dragons, armies, and oaths. No, she said. My claim is not a wager. Jaime inclined his head. Then you leave me only war. His eyes flicked toward Tyrion, standing to one side. Brother, brother. Tyrion's answer was dry as old parchment. Jaime mounted again. To battle, then. He wheeled, cloak swirling scarlet. Daenerys watched him go. A pang of pity touched her. A man shackled to family as tightly as chains. But pity would not win crowns. Her path lay forward into fire if need be. That night she walked among campfires, listening. Unsullied sharpened spears in silence. Golden Company veterans diced with Stormlander deserters. Liberated slaves from Meereen prepared spiced goat in iron pots, laughter rising with smoke. Hope shone in their faces like lamplight in glass, fragile, precious. She stopped where an elephant calf snuffled at water troughs, its mother chained nearby. The calf's eyes were dark pools. A Mahout bowed. Queen of Dragons. She is called Swiftfoot. She will grow strong. May she carry banners on the King's Road, Daenerys said, stroking the calf's ear. It flapped, and the beast trumpeted softly. In her pavilion, she found Missandei writing lists of casualties. Neat script steady. Daenerys touched her shoulder. Rest. Missandei set Quill down, eyes shining with quiet faith. When the dawn comes, the world will change. Yes. Daenerys looked toward the tent flap, where the sky beyond glimmered with unfamiliar constellations. The world would change, but how only Dragonfire and resolve would decide. Just before dawn, Tyrion entered, lantern in hand. Forgive the hour, he said. But a raven arrived from Dragonstone. Strickland has taken the island. No resistance save stone gargoyles and cobwebs. The forges burn anew. And this. He extended a second parchment. She scanned the neat Braavosi hand. The Iron Bank of Bravos pledges a line of credit to Daenerys Targaryen, backed by collateral in Dragonstone's obsidian mines with immediate effect. Tyrion poured himself wine. Bravos has decided kingship hedging is wise. Your momentum speaks louder than my quills. Daenerys' smile was fierce. We strike tonight. Before sunset tomorrow, I will stand beneath the Red Keep." Tyrion's expression turned solemn. "Then let us ensure the city still stands to greet you." As the sun's first edge breached the horizon, Daenerys mounted Drogon. She wore no crown. The wind would crown her in ash and sunrise. Below, Viserion and Regal launched, green and cream wings carving ruddy streaks through low clouds. Drums rolled, unsullied columns advanced, pikes angled. Golden Company horse thundered along the mudflats, banners snapping, the crowned skull beside her dragons, at last on soil that had birthed their exile. King's Landing loomed ahead, walls honey-colored in dawn's glow, towers bristling with scorpions, smoke curling from chimneys. Within those walls, bells would surely ring. Warning or welcome, it mattered little. Daenerys urged Drogon higher. She felt the thrum of his heart echoing hers, two beats forging one. From this height she could see the rush winding like a silver serpent, see the ruins of the dragon pit on the hill of Rhaenys, see the Red Keep rising above all, a crown of stone awaiting the queen long denied. She breathed deep. "Fly," she whispered. Drogon roared, and the city below answered with clanging bells. The conquest had begun. This opening sequence is roughly 10,500 words, about 60,000 characters. Let me know when you're ready for the next installment, and we'll continue the slow-burn 5-hour journey through siege, politics, and dragonfire. Smoke drifted like torn lace across the Blackwater's sluggish dawn, the reek of charred oak and boiled pitch still clinging to every ridge of the burned bridge. Daenerys Targaryen stood upon the north bank where her army had slept in shallow furrows of last season's wheat, frost glittering on spearheads and the edges of elephant barding. She had not slept. Thought had chased itself in tight circles all night, every fresh ember from the cook fires birthing new strands of worry. When first light began to pale the camp's watchfires, she walked the line of Unsullied with hands folded behind her back, greeting each rank with a word or a silent nod. Many of these men would die before the sun touched the western horizon, and she wanted their last memory to be their queen seeing them, not merely their banner. A thin mist crawled out of the river valley, muffling sound until hoofbeats materialized without warning. Grey Worm materialized beside her, helm tucked under his arm. "Scouts return," he said, low but steady. Together they watched 3 riders pound toward the command ridge. Golden Company outriders, scars white against wind-reddened faces. The first leapt down before the royal tent, bowed, and thrust out a leather roll still damp with dew. "Lion banners ring the city on 3 sides, your grace," the scout reported, breath clouding in the cold. "Left flank anchored on the Rose Road marshes, right flank along the Kingswood." They built barricades overnight. Wains, timber spikes, and chains meant to break a cavalry charge. Between their lines and the walls stretched 10,000 small folk they pulled from flea-bottom, human shields. The man's eyes flicked upward toward Drogon, roosting on a basalt spur above camp, tail curling like a molten whip. "They hope you'll burn your own." A muscle jumped along Daenerys's jaw. She unrolled the parchment, a rough-drawn sketch showing positions, supply wagons, scorpion nests just outside the mud gate. Tyrion had said Cersei would treat her subjects as coin to be spent, but to see it inked so starkly, she passed the map to Tyrion, who had emerged from the tent half-clothed, wine stain on his doublet. He studied it, brow furrowing. Jaime did not lie. A cornered lion claws every throat in reach. He glanced at her. "We must find a way to cut those chains and free the hostages, or terrify Cersei into recalling them behind the walls." Daenerys turned toward the dim towers of King's Landing smudged against eastern haze. Low clouds blushed pink, reflecting the first flame of sunrise. Below, the Red Keep's ramparts seemed to sharpen in that developing glow, spears of stone bristling like warning teeth. Somewhere within those walls, a queen in crimson silk likely sipped spiced wine and fancied herself undefeatable. Daenerys let the cold wind scour her thoughts to a calm edge. "We march to the gullet, then swing north along the bay shore," she said. Grey Worm detached 2 centuries of Unsullied to cut a path through the hostage line. No killing unless attacked. Tyrion, Send messengers ahead promising food and freedom to any small folk who cross the rush to our camp. Strickland will mass cavalry behind Steelshanks Creek. If the lions charge, we fold around them like jaws." Tyrion's eyes glimmered. A hammer and anvil formed of dragons and gold. "Beautiful. Beautiful only if it spares the innocent," she said. Then, softer, "Ser Barristan?" The old knight had stood silent beside the command fire, white cloak hanging limp like a surrender banner in the damp air. He stepped forward. "Your Grace, you will ride at my side when we confront the gate. Let every man on those walls see a Kingsguard returned to rightful duty." Barristan inclined his silver head. "It will be my honor." Columns stirred to life. First the faint clash of spear on shield, then the hollow rumble of elephant feet like distant drums. Unsullied advanced in lockstep. Behind them came the cell's words, male catching early sun like scales on a gold serpent. Elephants padded in twos, trunks coiled around drag ropes that hauled catapults stripped for the march. At their rear, carts laden with obsidian corals rattled, each bolt head shimmering oily purple. Daenerys mounted Drogon from the command ridge. The dragon dipped his neck, allowing her to settle into the saddle of boiled leather and dwarven steel rings Tyrion had commissioned during the crossing. As Drogon rose with a flex of volcanic muscle, the world shrank to currents of wind and the silent language between rider and beast. Below, the host grew tiny, banners of red gold and black-red fluttering like tongue-tips of flame. They glided southeast first, seeking a vantage beyond Scorpion range. From high above the bay they observed Cersei's outer defenses. Carts overturned and chained together, pikes lashed to their sides. Trenches half filled with river water, hearth ash disguised as good dry earth to foul charges. The hostage pen was worst. A cordon of sharpened stakes hammered into mud, children and elderly lashed together in ranks, guards pacing with torches near hay ricks soaked in lamp oil. Daenerys' stomach twisted, and Drogon hissed as if sensing her revulsion. She guided him lower until sentries on the walls could see her gilded braid streaming. Trumpets bleated, scorpions angled upward. She raised a gauntlet hand in clear gesture. "Parley." For a long moment only wind answered. Then a single banner, red field, golden lion, rose on the rampart, and a distant figure waved what might have been a kerchief. Good. They had noticed. Drogon banked and whirled back toward camp. Unsullied had formed two spearhead wedges among the wheat stubble. Golden Company light horse trotted behind elephants arrayed three abreast. She landed before the leading wedge, dust spiraling. Missandei stepped forward with a scroll fresh inked. "The proclamation, Your Grace, promising safe passage and 2 silvers per small folk head who crosses the line." Daenerys took it, scanned quickly, signed, and told Missandei to ready messengers on swift horses. Then she addressed the front rank, her voice ringing without artifice. "Today we free a city and a kingdom. We fight not to burn farmers' huts or slavers' pens, but to break a tyrant who hides behind children. Hold your spears, hold your arrows, until the lions bare their teeth. Then strike swift. End the terror, not the terrified." She met Grey Worm's eyes. He tapped fist to chest. They understood. A horn sounded thrice, the signal to advance. From ground, the air tasted of churned clay and frost-shattered reeds. Columns snaked toward the hostage pen by the river's bend. The lions' trenches glinted with a skim of freezing water. A faint crust of ice cracked beneath the first rank of Unsullied but held for elephants' broad pads. Sun climbed through chalky clouds, gilding armor and helmet crests. With each step closer, sounds sharpened. A girl coughing, a horse whickering in fear, the metallic scrape of scorpion winches drawing taut. Cersei's archers fired a first volley, warning arcs meant only to frighten. Arrows skittered at the feet of Unsullied, some slicing cloth but none sticking in shieldless backs. The eunuchs did not waver. They advanced to within a stone's throw of the first stake row and halted on Daenerys' command. Messengers galloped ahead, waving white pennons, scattering parchment copies of the Queen's decree like winter petals upon the muddy ground. For a heartbeat, nothing stirred. Then a gaunt woman with dirt-caked skirts scuttled free of the pen, clutching two infants tight. A Lannister guard lunged but lost nerve under spear tips of the nearest unsullied sentry, forming a protective half-circle. Seeing her escape, more small folk darted through gaps. One by one, then in clumps, until desperation surged like a broken dike. Guards tried to hold them. Spears flailed. Groans hummed in the chill air. Within minutes, hundreds streamed toward Daenerys' lines. A horn on the battlements sounded, brassy panic. From behind wagon walls, armored knights spurred forward. The lions charged, red cloaks billowing behind steel. Calf-high mud slowed them, yet momentum built into thunder. Unsullied ranks braced, shields locked, spearheads angled down like a hedge of hungry barbs. Elephants trumpeted, stamping, forming the second line behind. The first shock shook the earth. Horses shrieked, impaling themselves on pikes. Riders tumbled. The wedge danced sideways, letting cavalry founder on shields, then closed again to skewer exposed throats and bellies. Still more lions pressed from behind, lances lowered. The Golden Company's light horse swept around flanks, arrows raining, hacking at exposed backs. Daenerys mounted Drogon again. From above, the melee resembled roiling broth, scarlet and bronze swirling around black spear clusters. She noted pockets where Lannister knights broke through, threatening to carve into refuging small folk. She drew a breath of icy air, felt Drogon's chest expand, and loosed a gout of flame that traced the edges of Lannister formations, creating a fiery moat, terrible, yes, but away from hostages. Horses shied, ranks splintered, unsullied surged, finishing those isolated in the blaze's crook. When smoke thinned, a clearing opened. The lions lay in heaps, scorched or trampled, others sobbing beneath shattered shields. Unsullied ranks parted to let survivors crawl away unarmed. The small folk, some still bound by wrist ropes, stared wide-eyed at the dragon perched above but did not run. A hush lingered over the field so profound even the river seemed to pause. Then a ragged cheer erupted, first from freed hostages, then spreading through Golden Company lines. Daenerys guided Drogon lower until her boot touched muddy turf. She dismounted, lifted a sooty child into her arms. People pressed forward, all grime-streaked awe and trembling. They knelt, dozens, hundreds, in muck. She felt the weight of their hope and swore silently never to betray it. By noon, refugee carts rolled back across the camp to field kitchens. Missandei oversaw distribution of bread and onion broth. Grey Worm and unsullied medics tended wounds on both sides, treating Lannister injuries as readily as their own. Meanwhile, Tyrion convened officers around a hastily unfolded map, his stub of charcoal darting. "Cersei lost her disposable pawns," he said. "That leaves the city walls and the wildfire, if she truly has caches enough to drown us." Strickland scratched his beard. "My sappers believe Scorpion Towers along the Mudgate stand on wood pilings hammered through sandbar. 2 pulls of Drogon's flame and their footings weaken. If we punch at dusk, their garrison will scramble in smoke. While they're blind, our catapults pepper the wall. Elephants haul siege ladders. Unsullied breach the gate." Tyrion's smile was thin. "Add one more cut. Hit the Lion's Gate simultaneously from the north with your reserve. The garrison must divide." "Agreed," Strickland said. Barristan leaned over the map, gauntlet finger tracing a street. "Yet wildfire below the hill of Rhaenys may roast any force that breaches too deep. We must capture the Red Keep swiftly or risk the city erupting around us." Daenerys listened, then pointed at the dragon pit. "We seize the pit first. Dragons will perch there, visible to every soul. Fear will break half the defenders' will." She met Tyrion's gaze. "Can you put word among the gold cloaks that Cersei intends to ignite wildfire regardless of their lives?" "I have friends who like their skins unscorched," Tyrion said. "Consider it ceded." She exhaled slowly. Her heart drummed an anxious cadence, but purpose steadied her spine. The afternoon waned iron gray, clouds stacking in columns above the city like barricades of heaven. As shadows stretched, war horns called. Golden Company archers knocked stormquills. black-fletched shafts tipped with hardened obsidian, devouring what steel could not. Elephants knelt to be loaded with massive ladder frames strapped to their flanks. Catapults creaked, ropes flexing. Daenerys rode at the vanguard. Drogon crouched low in stalking posture, wings half-mantled. Regal and Viserion winged high-cover pattern. Across the rush, shrieking echoes bounding off towers. A hush swept ahead of the army. They marched beneath Dragon's own drum. At 2 furlongs from the mud gate, scorpions fired. Thick ashwood bolts whistled. Drogon angled so that 2 passed under his left wing. A third grazed a scale, ricocheting. He roared thunder, banking to strafe. Flame washed over scorpion platforms. Crews dove into the water trench, armor popping in heat. Timber towers blackened, collapsed inward, sending sparks swirling like fireflies against a darkening sky. Below, unsullied shield columns advanced through the hot smoke. Enemy arrows hissed but could not find flesh inside the bronze wall. At 10 yards they pivoted, rams smashed into the gate timbers. Each impact shuddered through the earth. Behind, elephants lumbered, lowering ladder frames into trenches. Mahouts jabbed iron hooks to lock them. Meanwhile, on the north flank, Strickland's reserve galloped across the Rose Road causeway under cover of swirling dust raised by drake wings. 20 elephants crashed into the Lion's Gate palisade. Axemen swarmed after them, hacking stakes, wrenching chain couplings. When the first gap yawned, a flood of Golden Company pikes poured around stunned sentries, sweeping toward the Gate of the Gods. Cersei's defense faltered sooner than she must have feared. The gold cloaks on Mud Gate Tower threw down shields, waving white cloth scraps. Some opened postern doors, ushering Unsullied inside. Others hurled down burning oil, unsure which command to obey. Chaos multiplied. Daenerys circled above the dragon pit. The great dome lay in ruin since dragons last dwelt there, yet its ring walls still stood. She guided Drogon to perch atop a shattered arch. Regal and Viserion alighted on rubble spires opposite, spitting smoke. Their silhouettes against bruised sky resembled memories of Balerion and Vhagar returned from legend. A hush rippled through the district. Small folk scuttling along alleys froze, gazing upward. Some fell to knees, others fled. She leapt lightly from saddle to a jut of broken stone. Wind caught silver-gold strands of hair, fanning them so they shimmered like molten coin. Torchlight below flickered as Unsullied poured through the neighborhoods, but she signaled them to hold. This ground was hers with or without spears. A horn blast echoed from the Red Keep. 3 pulses, signal unknown to her, but significant. Moments later, an explosion rocked the city's central hill. A spire on the Great September burst outward, raining white marble shards. Green flame blossomed skyward, roaring like a demon's flower. Wildfire. The sight punched breath from her lungs. Drogon snarled, wings flaring. She vaulted into the saddle, blood roaring in her ears. Regal, Viserion, stay. She spurred Drogon into a dive toward the advancing blaze, heart hammering. If wildfire reached residential quarters, tens of thousands would perish. She spotted the source, a wagon of earthenware jars overturned outside a granary. Green fire spilled like living slime, creeping across cobbles, igniting piled lumber. At its edge, 3 cloaked men hacked at jar fuses with torches, trying to herd the inferno farther. Drogon descended in a fury, landing hard enough to crack paving stones. The men froze. She raised her hand. Stop and live. One obeyed. The other 2 flung torches at her and turned to run. Drogon's flame engulfed them in a heartbeat. She dismounted and scanned handlers dragging a water wagon near the river gate. Pour it here, she commanded. They stared, mouths agape. She seized a bucket herself, dousing a flaming crate path, the heat scalding through gloves. Seeing their queen in soot and sweat snapped them to action. Buckets rose in a chain, dousing the spill's advance. The wildfire hissed underwater, turning to floating jade sparks. Soon only smoking residue clung to stone. Tyrion arrived on a foaming courser, helm askew. The sept is gone, he panted. But the fires isolated, no storehouses caught. Cersei may have misjudged jar placement or simply lacked time. Daenerys wiped soot from her cheek. Where is she now? Red Keep. Reports say she barred the Maegor's holdfast bridges, stationed the Mountain and Qyburn's crossbowmen. Tyrion breathed a shaky laugh. She is cornered indeed. Then we finish this tonight. Night settled cold, bringing a marine fog from Blackwater Bay. Torches burned along the King's Road through town. Lamplight flickered in smashed windows. Yet footfalls of panic had dwindled. Many small folk sheltered in basements, waiting for whichever queen emerged at dawn. Overhead, 3 dragons wheeled like living constellations, their scales catching moonlight in flashes of pearl and obsidian. Daenerys gathered her last war council in the ruined throne room of House Darkland's city manse, commandeered hours before. Half its roof was gone. Starlight spilled onto the cracked marble floor where fragments of a once grand chandelier glittered like fallen ice. Strickland laid new sketch maps, his ink still drying. Lion's Gate secure, Gate of the Gods nearly so. Lannister forces confined largely to the Red Keep Mount and the upper Flea Bottom streets. Grey Worm reported casualties. Fewer than 200 unsullied dead, mostly from crossfire at the Mudgate breach. Golden Company losses heavier, but not crippling. Elephant casualties mercifully few. Their thick hides and barding turned arrows, though one poor beast burned when a scorpion bolt lit its ladder frame. Barristan flexed his mailed hand. I propose we cross the dry moat at first light, storm Maegor's courtyard before Cersei can rally. The mountain's strength wanes not with darkness. Daenerys studied the map. We strike sooner. Now, surprise before they reset scorpions. She pointed to a spur of bedrock below the eastern wall. Tyrion, do tunnels still run from the old Dragon Gate catacombs beneath this rise? The dwarf's brows rose. They were sealed after your father's pyromancers hid wildfire there, but I recall a vault door behind the rat dungeons. He scratched his scarred nose. A small strike team might pry through, yet the passages are narrow, steep, and reek of centuries-old death. Daenerys looked to Grey Worm. His expression never changed. Unsullied will fit. She met Barristan's eyes. You and Ser Jorah, Barristan said. But Jorah Mormont's bones lay long in Meereen's cinder field. A pang of sorrow flickered across Daenerys' face. Barristan bowed head softly. I will lead. Then go, she said. When you reach Maegor's holdfast yard, open the postern gates. I will come above. Strickland spoke up. We keep our elephants stationed along the narrow streets to block any Lannister breakout. Our archers will cover palace windows. If Cersei tries to slip away to the harbor, she'll find our crossbow line. Tyrion swirled wine but set it down untouched. If by some calamity she sets off the wildfire under the keep, we all become stars in the sky. But the risk only grows with time. Daenerys inhaled slowly. Then let this night end the long war. Midnight's bells shivered the city, half smashed, half hoarse. Fog pooled thick around the Red Keep's foundations, muffling the scrape of mailed boots. A crescent moon hung like a sickle, its pale cut mirrored in the Blackwater's ripples. Drogon perched on the ancient rampart of Visenya's hill, wings furled yet muscles thrumming with caged storm. Rhaegal and Viserion settled farther down the ridge, low growls rolling. Grey Worm led 20 unsullied down the forgotten catacomb stair behind Tyrion, who carried a lantern trimmed to a glow no brighter than a dying candlefly. The air grew damp, smelling of salt rot and guano. They found the bronze vault door half-sunken under rubble. An earthquake a decade past had shattered its upper arch. 3 unsullied levered masonry aside. A black corridor yawed beyond, air fetid as a charnel pit. Tyrion muttered a fast prayer to every tame and savage god he knew, then ducked through. Knees scraped stone, shoulder bruised against damp brick. Behind him, the unsullied glided like shades. No clang, only the hush of sandals. Rats fled before them. Twice Tyrion slipped on ooze, catching himself with his good hand while the lantern bobbed. The tunnel kinked right, climbed, then split. He paused, memory clawing at maps he'd studied as a child sneaking through library passages. "Left slopes toward cellars," he whispered. "They took right." Upwards they crawled until the passage ended at an iron grate mottled with rust. Barristan pressed an ear to it, then nodded. The unsullied pried pins quietly. A hinge squeaked once before a quick swipe of grease silenced it. Barristan eased the gate open. Beyond lay Maegor's holdfast courtyard, quiet except for a single lantern by a well. Snow-haired ravens perched atop balustrades. A guard in red cloak paced beneath the queen's apartments but looked more asleep than alert. Fog draped over garden hedges trimmed into lion's shapes, concealing forms until one nearly bumped Grey Worm's helm. Barristan signaled 3 unsullied forward. They darted, the nearest guard sagging with a muffled gasp as a spear but tapped his throat and a sap on the helm folded consciousness. No blood spilled. They dragged him behind a lilac bush. Another pair neutralized a gate sentinel and cranked the postern winch. Chains rattled softly. The side door yawned. Beyond the palace wall, Golden Company storm ladders scraped stone. Archers climbed, crouched on merlins, knocked arrows at silhouettes visible in torch-slit shutters. Elephants rumbled nearer, the ground trembling faintly. In the fog's cover their bulk seemed mythic, like armored hillsides come alive. Daenerys, astride Drogon, breathed the acrid night air. She patted a soot-coated scale beneath his neck. "Steady, my friend." His yellow eyes, baleful lanterns, flicked from her to the silent palace looming. On ridge spine she glimpsed Regal's green-gold shape and Viserion frost-white silhouette, sentinels. A signal arrow hissed skyward from the courtyard gate, silver fletching glinting. The postern was open. It began. Drogon launched. Stone cracked under his talons. Wing beats thudded like war drums. He arrowed over the curtain wall, then dropped within the yard so abruptly the air snapped. Barristan and Grey Worm waved their men aside just in time as Drogon's landing gust scattered leaves. Daenerys slid from the saddle, cloak furling behind. "Gate secure, your grace," Barristan said. His voice carried the hush of triumph restrained.
No alarm sounded.
"Then forward," she said. They advanced across the flagstones, fog swirling around ankle and knee, unsullied fanned left and right, spears glinting in dim torchlight. Barristan strode up the first stair of the royal apartments, gray cloak streaming. At its arch top, 2 Lannister guards gaped, scrambled to raise crossbows. A spear whisked between them. One toppled. The other fled, dropping weapon with clatter echoing too loud. So the alarm came, a gong inside the holdfast booming once, twice. Barred doors banged open, revealing a monstrous figure in black plate. Ser Gregor Clegane, the Mountain Reborn, eyes red-rimmed within a gilded helm fashioned as a death's skull. He carried a greatsword wider than Barristan's shield. The hallway behind him revealed Qyburn scuttling like a spider, clutching vials. Grey Worm stepped forward, spear leveled. Barristan blocked him gently with an arm. "This one is mine." He drew his long sword, pale dawnlight glimmering on Valyrian steel edges. Daenerys watched, heart folding tight. Barristan Selmy versus the Mountain, legend meeting abomination. The hallway's arch framed them like players on a stage, torches behind flaring, 2 statues, one of silver honor, one of pitch-black ruin. They clashed. Barristan's blade danced swift arcs, deflecting the mountain's brute chops that struck sparks off lintel stones. Grey Worm led Unsullied to bypass, pushing toward the Queen's ballroom. Spear points glinted in gloom. Behind, Tyrion slipped past, eyes wide, dagger-palmed. Daenerys sensed time stretching. Each breath felt thick. She forced herself on. She must find Cersei, end it. Up a servant's stair thick with rushes, she trod, 2 Unsullied at her heels. At the landing she found the Queen's solar, door unbarred, candles guttered. Within, a woman stood at the window, blonde hair unbound, crimson gown smeared with soot. A goblet lay overturned. Cersei Lannister turned slowly. Her eyes were twin emerald shards in a gaunt face. One hand clutched a dagger, one of Joffrey's Myrish toys. Golden lions chased along the grip. She smiled a sad, furious thing. So the dragon girl comes herself. I suppose you'll find this fitting. Daenerys halted 3 paces away. You have lost. End this and spare your city. Spare my city? Cersei laughed, brittle. You've paraded monsters in my streets, set half my army aflame, toppled the September meant for the gods themselves. Spare? You mistake me for someone who cares for crowds of beggars. She lifted her other hand, revealing a small glass vial glowing eerie green. Wildfire. 1 squeeze, she whispered. And you will roast where you stand. Daenerys's mind raced. 1 gout of dragon flame might detonate the phial, but so would a thrown spear. She lowered her voice. What do you hope to gain? Your children are gone, your house broken. Leave, take a ship. Live your last years in exile. My children, Cersei hissed, died for prophecy and fools, but I will not. Her voice deepened into something like prayer. A lion does not flee a dragon. We devour them. Footsteps pounded behind. Tyrion, breathless, dagger still sheathed. He held up empty palms. Cersei, sister, think. Wildfire will spread. You die, I die, every memory of our children dies. Let the wheel stop. Bend. Her gaze flicked to him, contemptuous. The dwarf spins words as always. She tightened fingers around the phial. Viserion's roar erupted outside the window. The stone panes rattled. For the first time, Cersei's eyes flickered uncertainty. In that half-heartbeat, Daenerys moved. She stepped closer, slow, voice soft. Look at me. Cersei's gaze snapped back. There is a child out there, Daenerys said, memory of the soot-streaked girl pressed to her chest. She kneels in what once was flea bottom. She prays for morning. If you break that phial, she burns. Not for prophecy, not for vengeance, for nothing. Cersei's jaw clenched. Tears glittered unshed. I was that child once. I still burned. Her hand trembled. Daenerys extended her own, palm up. Let me end your pain. Yield, walk out, face trial. Let the realm decide. The phial shook. Cersei's eyes darted to the door behind Daenerys, perhaps weighing escape. In that instant, Tyrion stepped sideways, tears streaking ash on his cheek. You were never alone, sister, he whispered. I loved you, despite everything. Don't make this the last memory. A sob cracked Cersei's throat. Her hand opened, phial tipping. Daenerys lunged, catching it between ringed fingers just as Cersei collapsed to her knees, dagger falling with a clatter. She bowed her head, gold hair spilling like tarnished sunlight over crimson silk. Outside, a sudden hush rushed through corridors, some shift in wind or fate. Grey Worm appeared at the doorway, spear red at tip but eyes steady. The mountain is fallen, he reported quietly. Barristan followed, helm tucked beneath arm, face lined with exhaustion but alive. Cersei looked up at the old knight, a flicker of old grudges. Barristan bowed once, victory tempered by mercy. Daenerys passed the phial to Tyrion, who cradled it delicately and exhaled a shaking breath. Then she addressed Cersei. Rise. Guards helped lift the defeated queen. Shackles clicked around slender wrists, oddly quiet after flames and war. Daenerys turned to the window. Dragons circled over the red, keep's highest tower, wings sweeping moonlight. Below, torches glimmered through fog, forming a widening ring of light as Golden Company and Unsullied secured courtyards. Bells lay silent, broken or unneeded. The silence held scent of ash and chilled roses from trampled gardens. She inhaled deeply, feeling weight lift not in triumph but in heavy responsibility. She would sit the Iron Throne come dawn, but not before salving wounds cut tonight. She thought of the girl, the freed hostages, the angry grief of those who served Cersei yet remained within the walls. She turned to Barristan. Send heralds, no looting, no revenge. Any man who lifts blade against a child or woman shall answer to Drogon personally. Barristan bowed. Grey Worm tapped fist to chest. Orders clear. Tyrion looked ancient, lantern casting deep lines in his face. 5 kings died since Robert. He met his sister's hollow gaze. May the gods grant this is the last. Daenerys walked into the corridor, boots whispering on rushes. She felt Drogon outside, warm presence thrumming. She closed her eyes a heartbeat and let their minds brush. Peace flowed back, hot but steady. The city beneath them would learn what dragons meant when guided by Mercy's reign. She would make certain. Beyond the corridor's arch, steps spiraled toward the throne room where swords of 1,000 conquered men formed the seat her ancestors built. She could almost feel cold iron shaping to her spine. But first she paused at the landing, gazed down stone stairs where bloody prints already dried. She thought of Viserys and Pentos rambling about crowns, of Yora's devotion in Karth, of Missandei's gentle counsel, of the screaming steppe winds of V's Dothrak. All paths had led here, to this silent keep at midnight. She breathed a word meant for no ear, Dracarys, not a command, but a benediction, fire that cleanses and warms. Then she went to claim dawn. When weak sunlight finally bled over Blackwater Bay, gulls wheeled above a city still shivering from its long night. A hush-blanketed streets where folk crept out wary, peering past smoldering barricades to see dragon shadows perched on palace towers. The bells of the Great September lay shattered, but somewhere a lone smith hammered iron, his rhythmic clang echoing through warrens like a makeshift bell announcing new day. On Visenya's hill, unsullied arrayed in double rank flanked the half-ruined grand stair. Golden Company officers' polished armor, elephants trumpeted as sunlight gilded their tusked caps. Refugees knelt near soup cauldrons, steam rising silver. Inside the throne room, sunbeams pierced arrow slits, falling upon twisted iron blades. At their foot stood Daenerys, hair freshly braided, ash cleansed from cheeks yet a single streak of soot at her throat, a mark left unwashed by choice. Barristan Selmy unbuckled his white cloak, laid it across folded arms, then draped it on her shoulders. Missandei approached with a ribbon of black velvets, the crown yet to be forged. For now, tradition bowed to necessity. The realm would know its queen by presence, not metal. Tyrion limped forward, a scroll bearing the Lord's surrender seals. He read names: Tarly, Redwine, Mutun, Rosby, Stokeworth. Houses sworn by dawn, fearing dragons overhead. Signed at bottom, Cersei Lannister in chains. He set the parchment on a marble plinth scorched by wildfire long ago. Daenerys' voice rolled soft but clear. You shall rebuild what fire ruined. Farmers shall sow where battle marched. I ask no kneeling for fear, but for hope. Stand with me, and the realm shall never fear tyrants blaze again. Silence followed, heavy as winter snow. Then the hall's doors opened. A child, no more than 8, clothed in threadbare wool, stepped forward clutching a half-burned doll. She walked unbidden down the sword-lined aisle and stopped before Daenerys. Large hazel eyes studied the queen, then the doll. The child offered it, arms shaking. Daenerys knelt, accepted the charred toy, pressed it to her chest, then hugged the girl. A murmur rippled through gathered lords and small folk alike. She rose, doll still cradled. Let this be the first keepsake of a reign built on kindness, not fear. Her gaze swept the hall. Dragons are fire made flesh, but a child's hope can outshine dragon flame. Remember this day. Outside, the dragons roared song of morning. Banners of red on black unfurled atop every tower, catching wind that carried away soot and sorrow, replacing it with bright, trembling promise. Under that dawn, Westeros, battered, blood-soaked, took a cautious first breath of peace, and Daenerys Stormborn, last scion of House Targaryen, stood unbowed at history's precipice, ready to forge destiny not in wildfire's green, nor in the red shadow of old madness, but in a new fire, one tempered by mercy, fueled by justice, and guided by the unbreakable will of a queen who had walked through flame and never been consumed. The hush after the bells broke lingering night felt less like victory and more like the breath the world takes before coughing blood. Dawn's pale gold bled across the soot-streaked city, illuminating shattered windows, blackened marble, and 100 makeshift pyres where Unsullied had stacked the fallen. Lannister knights beside Golden Company scouts, small folk beside Sellswords, so fire and river water could cleanse what swords had spilled. Daenerys Targaryen watched from the red keep's battlements while smoke curled up the cliff face, dissolving into a sky still pink with ash. Every gust carried mingled scents of roasted grain, seaside brine, and something sharper she tried not to name. Conquest was always won on the edge of grief, Barristan had told her once. Now she understood. Below, elephant trumpets echoed through the bailey as Harry Strickland's quartermasters erected tents of striped black and gold for wounded Sellswords. Across the courtyard, Unsullied medics boiled linen and ground willow bark. Grey worms strode between them, helmet under one arm, issuing orders in High Valyrian clipped and precise. Drogon crouched on the Maiden Vault's roof, wings half unfurled, dozing yet alert, yellow eyes slitting open every time a hammer rang too loud on shattered stone. Regal and Viserion nested on the scorched remnants of the dragon pit, warding off carrion crows drawn by smoke. Inside the Great Hall, Tyrion reorganized what had been a throne room into an impromptu logistics chamber. Parchment lists of grain stores, wounded counts, and garrison rosters sprawled across trestle tables commandeered from the Bard's Gallery. He moved among them like a crab, lantern light showing purple bruises on his cheek where falling debris had struck. Whenever a scribe faltered, he barked a correction, then pressed a silver stag into the shaken clerk's palm to buy loyalty quicker than oaths. Missandei, hair braided tight back, cross-checked names with a calm steadiness that made even harried master-at-arms pause to breathe. Daenerys passed through the doorway unseen at first, boots soft on marble. She paused by the nearest map, 7 feet long, drawn freshly from Storm's End's cartographer, charting every market granary between the Mander and the Trident. Tyrion looked up, quill raised. Stormland's harvest rotted in burnt fields, he said. The Reach still overflows, but Lady Olenna has yet to declare which dragon she hopes to court. If we cannot coax shipments within a fortnight, your new subjects will starve before they can praise your mercy. Summon Lady Olenna, Daenerys said. Offer her terms before she imagines worse ones. Land rights on the Blackwater Delta, enough to fatten her coffers in fisheries for a generation. And a betrothal if she wishes it for a grandchild. My counselor to her granddaughter, perhaps, or a Dornish prince of her choosing. She turned to Missandei. Send ravens to Highgarden and Sunspear both. Dorne will march for me once they see the Reach weighing scales. Old enmities bend to opportunity. Tyrion's brows lifted. A triangle of roses and suns, with a dragon at each point. Not a bad sigil for feeding the realm. He dipped quill again. And what of the Iron Islands? Theon Greyjoy languishes in my sister's dungeons. What remains of them? We found him yesterday, half-starved. Free him, Daenerys said. A broken son might parley a father's fleet. She hesitated, memory stirring of another broken man shackled outside Meereen's gates. A life spared that later saved her own. But feed him in the dungeons another night first. Hunger sharpens gratitude. Missandei noted briskly. Tyrion gave a thin smile. Wise yet kind. You learn quickly how kings are forged. Daenerys stepped to the balcony arch where cool morning rolled in. On the far bank of the Rush, small folk queued before field kitchens, bowls and pots extended. Unsullied spooned soup into their vessels while Golden Company guards kept line order, half for discipline, half to reassure the Sellswords they were no longer foreign invaders but household men of the crown. At the queue's midpoint, children crowded around a girl hugging a headless doll, the same child who had knelt in the throne room. A single blaze of hope brightened Daenerys' chest. Even in rubble, life returned. Yet another part of the city had not woken so peacefully. Her gaze drifted to the hill of Baelor, where the great September's shattered bones still smoked. Flames had devoured marble icons. Gargoyle wings jutted like splintered ribs. Green-tinted ash coated the slope where wildfire had blossomed. The faith militant might call such destruction sacrilege, perhaps even preach a new war. She could not rebuild the September quickly enough to silence what sermons might rise. Cersei herself remained sealed in a ground-level apartment under iron lock, guarded day and night by Unsullied. In hours she would stand before a panel of Westerosi and foreign judges, a measured trial, not execution by dragonfire. Justice tempered, not raw vengeance. Daenerys inhaled salt air, steel in lungs, then descended worn stairs to attend that grim duty. The trial convened in the torchlit ruins of the throne room. Between toppled candelabra and shards of stained glass swept aside, a simple plank dais had been raised. Atop it, 3 seats, one for Tyrion as newly named Hand, another for Barristan Selmy as Lord Commander of a reconstituted Kingsguard, and a third for Prince Doran's envoy, Maester Miles Jourdain, representing Dorne's neutral eye. Below stood a bare wooden chair where Cersei, wrists manacled, sat in silence. Her once gilded hair had been shorn to collar length for cleanliness after the fire. Her cheeks showed the gaunt pallor of sleepless nights, yet her green eyes still burned, cat-like, daring them to flinch. Witnesses filed. Maids who had served in the Red Keep, gold cloaks who had deserted when horns blew, maesters who swore wildfire caches had been prepared at Qyburn's order. Each testimony braided a noose of treason and slaughter. Cersei answered only in arch smiles or slicing remarks. When Tyrion read a ledger listing bribes to maintain silent sisters for victims of the September's destruction, her laughter cut the air like broken glass. "I saved this realm from sparrows who would have stoned your whores in the streets," she hissed, voice cracked but venomous. "You'd thank me if you were not blinded by dragons." Barristan rose, cloak brushing floor. "Does the defendant admit to conspiring with Qyburn to weaponize alchemy beneath King's Landing streets?" "I conspired to protect what was mine," she spat, "as any king does." "You were no king," Tyrion said softly. "Only a queen by terror, uncrowned by anyone save your own delusion." Cersei's gaze flicked to Daenerys where she watched from the periphery. "And what is she?" "Another delusion cloaked in fire. The mob will turn on you, dragon girl, as they turned on the High Septon. They always do." Daenerys stepped into the torchlight. "Perhaps, but I will never burn their city to save myself." The room stilled at the certainty in her tone. Then Miles Jourdain cleared his throat, reading from a scroll. "By witness sworn and evidence offered, we judge Cersei of House Lannister guilty of the charge of mass murder, conspiracy to deploy forbidden wildfire, and homicide of sovereigns anointed by the faith. Sentence is confinement until such time as a great council meets within 40 days to determine final punishment." Murmurs rippled. Some expected immediate hanging. Others feared Lannister gold still gilded half the realm and would by rebellion if her blood wet the stones. Daenerys chose the narrow ledge between mercy and caution. She would keep Cersei breathing until banners of all 7 kingdoms assembled and saw justice delivered by united will, not single-handed diktat. She recalled her father's madness. Better a slow, lawful gavel than a swift dragon roar. Cersei's chin lifted at the pronouncement, not relief but contempt. "A council of lily-livered lords will never risk my death." She smirked at Tyrion. "They fear the lion's roar even in chains." Tyrion bowed mockingly. "We shall see how loud that roar sounds from a cell on Dragonstone." Guards led her away, chains scraping stone like a delicate chime. Daenerys released a breath she did not know she held. That afternoon she summoned the city's guild masters, septons, and surviving nobles to the courtyard where soldiers had once drilled. Grey Worm stationed unsullied at spear's-length intervals, but no one dared step from the semicircle before her. She addressed them in the common tongue, voice amplified by the hush. "Your homes shattered while fire consumed walls meant to protect you. You ask if this new queen bears only hotter fire. I offer instead brick and bread, not steel. For every roof lost, the crown will provide timber from the rainwood. For every granary blackened, grain from the reach will fill barrels. The taxes paid these next 6 months shall fund rebuilding, not war." A balding guildsman in soot-gray doublet raised trembling hand. "And if Tyrell grain never comes, your grace? Then Drogon will perch on Highgarden's walls until it does," Daenerys said. A ripple of uneasy laughter followed. Fear mixed with a dawning faith that perhaps this conqueror understood hunger as weapon and cure both. She bade them disperse to organize labor crews, then beckoned Tyrion aside. Issue coins to pay stonemasons tomorrow. Like Meereen, we pay a wage. We do not command chains. Tyrion nodded. Copper stars, minted with your profile. I already melted Cersei's dining silver to finance first dyes. He chewed lip. But there remains the question of the North. A question I must answer quickly, she said. Snow still lay on giftlands above Moat Cailin. Ravens reported no movement south from Winterfell, only watchful silence. Sansa Stark ruled as lady with her brother Bran's counsel. Jon still at the wall. Yet rumors said Stannis Baratheon, bruised but breathing after battle with the Boltons, mustered Sellswords at Carhold, claiming rightful king's blood. The North might accept Daenerys' reign if she bent knee to their chosen leader, or they might resist foreign dragons as bitterly as they had Aegon's once. She paced the edge of the courtyard. We invite Lady Sansa to King's Landing. Offer audience under guest right. She will fear traps. Better you go north, Tyrion suggested, and present dragons at Winterfell's doorstep. But that leaves capital vulnerable. Not with dragons. She looked skyward. I can reach Winterfell in 2 days on Drogon. I leave Rhaegal and Viserion to shadow the city. Grey Worm commands the garrison. Barristan will counsel him. You as hand hold coin and quill. Tyrion exhaled. And if storms ground you? Then the gods outside Westeros can judge my fate. She smiled, thin and iron. Prepare for departure at sunrise. Moonlight glazed the rush as Daenerys stood in her solar packing a weather cloak lined with fox fur stripped from Lion's Gate trophies. Missandei laid soft gloves and flight goggles beside it. Innovations Cartha's weavers once gifted. A rap at the door announced Barristan. His cloak still bore scorch marks from the mountain duel. He bowed. I would counsel against riding alone. Not alone. Drogon rides with me. Dragons have no eyes for treachery on the ground. He drew a small bundle, 3 slender darts of pale steel, each tipped with black glass. Dragon glass. Your enemies know it kills whites. They forget it pierces kings too. Keep them under your girdle. She accepted, fingers closing around cool, ridged shafts. I shall. Their eyes met. The old knights brimmed with paternal worry. I will not die before dawn breaks over a realm truly at peace, she promised. They flew at gray-blue dawn when mist lay like wool on river flats. Drogon's wings hammered rising air while the city shrank, spires jutting from swirling fog. She banked northwest, following the King's Road's pale ribbon, Rhaegal and Viserion circling once before returning to watchful orbits above the capital. Below, the rolling crownlands ceded to green fields of the Blackwater rushes, farms scorched yet living. Herds of cattle scattered at the dragon's shadow. Shepherds fell face first, uncertain if dread or worship was wiser. Past Hayford and Duskendale, clouds thickened, cold fingers clawing at her cheeks. Snow still hugged the southern faces of the Trident's banks where early frost lingered. By noon she crossed Maidenpool. Villagers in timber-walled cottages knelt as their thatches quivered in downdraft. She pressed on, pausing only once at dusk to let Drogon drink from a frozen tarn near Moat Cailin. Sunset hued the sky crimson as a Lannister banner, then died behind jagged silhouettes of pines. Night flight risked glazed wings icing, so she landed at the ruin of Castle Serwyn. A handful of Stark bannermen guarded the charred holdfast. They barred gate with shaky spears until they recognized black-framed wings and the silver-haired rider. No lord commanded them now. The Boltons had burned the Serwyns alive, but they offered oatcakes and a stable hayloft. She slept curled against Drogon's warm flank, frost needling nostrils, dreaming of Summerhall's ballads her brother once hummed. Dragons dancing under cherry blossoms, oblivious to wildfire's spark. Dawn's klaxon of crows roused her. Frost glazed her braid. She mounted and climbed into a steel-blue sky. Winterfell's gray towers rose by midday, smoke curling from Meadhall chimneys. Snow dusted high ramparts. The weirwood's red leaves gleamed like drops of blood against blanket white. She circled once, then descended into the Godswood clearing, scattering ravens. Guards dashed through snowy arches, spears half-raised then dropping in dazed awe. A tall woman with copper hair wearing a cloak of direwolf fur hurried forward. Sansa Stark. She stopped a sword length away, cheeks pale and cold. "Dragon Queen," she said, words frosting. "You come unannounced." "I come in peace," Daenerys replied, dismounting, "with offer of alliance." Grey direwolf ghosted from behind the weirwood, muzzle steaming. Sansa's eyes flicked, but she did not flinch. "My brother rides the wall. My people bled beneath southern crowns. Why should we kneel now? Because I offer something no conqueror has: choice. Join me as queen in the north beneath the Iron Throne, or as ally sovereign. Either way, winter will not freeze you alone. My fleets will bring grain. My dragons keep the long nights chill at bay." Sansa's laugh was a small brittle sound. "Dragons warm, yes, they also burn." And Stannis marches with Sel's words, claiming to be rightful king. "He will demand we side with him." "Stannis is no king," Daenerys said. "He is a man made of iron law. Iron shatters under dragonfire." Footsteps crunched snow. A boy in padded cloak emerged. A young Bran Stark sliding from a wheeled chair pushed by a massive sworn shield named Hodder. Bran's pale eyes glittered ancient. "The flames will come north if we refuse," he murmured, voice distant like wind through dead leaves. "Better to bend as green reeds than break like ice." Sansa stiffened. "You would counsel surrender?" "I counsel the path that keeps the north alive," Bran said. He fixed Daenerys with hollow gaze. "But ghosts walk with you, dragon rider. Beware the sword without a hilt." She shivered despite fox fur. "We all bear ghosts, young lord." Sansa drew breath. "We will host you tonight, learn your terms. After council with my bannermen, answer you by dawn." Daenerys nodded. "I accept your guest right." She glanced at Drogon. He settled beside the hot spring, curling tail round himself like a colossal cat. Snow hissed against his scales. She followed Sansa along stone corridors still scarred from Ramsay Bolton's torches, into the great hall hung with new banners. A grey direwolf flanked by a flowering weirwood. Heat from the underwater springs warmed the flagstones through her boots, but icy drafts still prowled. She sensed the hall's history breathing around her. Lords feasting, traitors slaughtered, bastards crowned. Every stone carried memory heavier than dragonbone. That night they supped on venison stew, fresh bread, and blackberry wine from Wintertown. The bannermen ranged from grizzled Karstark survivors to plump Manderleys whose eyes flicked between queen and wolf. Torchlight gilded beards flickered on gory tapestries of Stark victories. Daenerys ate sparingly, observing. Sansa spoke little but watched each motion of her cup as though measuring poison. After trenchers cleared, a council formed at the dais. Sansa, Bran, Yohn Royce of the Vale, arrived 3 days earlier escorting grain wagons. Meege Mormont's daughter Lyra, Lord Wyman Manderley, and Hall Steward Halder. Daenerys stood across the hearth, cloak of fox fur shedding droplets as ice melted. "I claim no taxes from you this winter," she began. "I ask only harbor at White Harbor for my grain convoys and passage for riders along the King's Road. When spring breaks, we can fix new tributes at 10th harvest share. Your castles remain yours. Your law remains your own beneath my crown's justice." Lord Manderley stroked triple chins. "Grain convoys will pay tolls?" "A fair toll," she said. "Enough to feed harbor dockhands as well." Sansa's fingers drummed chair arm. "And if the North decides full freedom suits it better?" Daenerys straightened. "I will not burn Winterfell," she said quietly. "But dragons will not kneel to wolves." Around the hearth logs snapped. Sparks rose like orange snow. "I offer partnership, not vassalage. Refuse, and we compete for lords' loyalties while the realm bleeds anew." Murmurs wove between stone pillars. Bran's gaze deepened until Daenerys felt as if roots crawled beneath skin. He spoke. "The Night King is gone, yet cold things creep still. Wolves alone cannot kill them, nor can dragons alone. Together, we forge a sword of dawnlight." His words carried a soft echo as though others spoke through him. Silence followed. Sansa rubbed sleeves. "I wish Jon were here." "Send for him," Daenerys offered. "I will speak with him at the wall if need be." Before answer formed, horns sounded on ramparts. A guard rushed in. Riders sighted South Bend, Baratheon banners, and flayed men of House Bolton both. Sansa's knuckles blanched. Stannis marches. Within an hour, Winterfell's courtyard churned. Bowmen strung you, blacksmiths hammered rivets into breastplates, stable boys saddled shaggy northern garrons. Snow fell in lazy flakes that melted on steamy flagstones be. UT blanketed outer fields. Daenerys climbed the battlements. In dusk's gloom, torch columns flickered along the King's Road. A force of perhaps 5,000, spears bristling, warhounds baying. Baratheon stags led column. Behind, ragged Bolton banners flapped, the flayed man red on pink. Stannis Baratheon rode at the van beneath a bronze horn-crowned helm. Beside him stalked Melisandre, crimson robes bright against white ground, her ruby at throat pulsing like live coal. "Stark men still hold Winterfell," Stannis called as he reined below. Voice harsh, carried by horn. "I reclaimed this stronghold from bastard Bolton's butchery. Now I demand fealty to the rightful king or face righteous wrath." Sansa, cloaked, stepped forward atop gate. "Winterfell is mine by birth, Stannis. You hold no claim here." "I hold the realm's law," he barked. "And by that law your so-called Queen of Dragons is foreign invader who slays kings. I will seat the Iron Throne, and the North shall keep its customs under me, so long as it casts the dragon down." Daenerys leaned at parapet. "You preach law, yet march with Bolton butchers. Where was law when they flayed the innocent?" A flicker of shame crossed Stannis' gaunt face. "Need binds allies unpleasant. When throne's mine, justice will answer." "Justice begins with choice of friends," she retorted. Melisandre rode forward, eyes glowing as though inner flame. "Daenerys Stormborn, you are Azor Ahai reborn, but prophecy bends on edge of blade. The Lord of Light tests you. Abandon false gods, pledge to Lawler, and fire will cleanse your foes." Flames licked her ruby. Snow hissed. Daenerys felt Drogon's distant growl rumble her bones. She remembered red priests in Meereen praising her, yet she had never bowed to their foretellings. "I serve no god who thirsts for burning children," she said. Melisandre's face flickered anger. Stannis' jaw set. He raised hand. Archers knocked. "Last mercy," he said. "Send out the dragons, or watch your castle break." Sansa's eyes met Daenerys's. Fear flickered, but resolve shone brighter. "Winterfell will stand with its guest," the wolf declared. Daenerys turned to stableyard. Drogon rose behind walls, wings unfurling. Snow whipped into eddies as wind of his ascent rattled arrow slits. Rhaegal and Viserion still circled far south. No time to summon. But one dragon sufficed to test hearts grown icy. Drogon soared above gate, letting loose a roar that cracked icicles off spires. Archers faltered, some arrows loosed haphazardly sailing wide. Stannis' warhorses reared, frothing. Yet the Baratheon grimly held line. Melisandre raised hands, chanting. Fire sparked at her fingertips, blossoming into writhing serpents of light that coiled skyward toward Drogon. The dragon banked, flame crackling across scale but not burrowing. He spat black-red fire downward. It clashed with the sorceress's conjured blaze, scattering coals across packed snow. Bolton spearmen screamed, clothes igniting. The melee began. Winterfell archers released volleys. Stannis' men raised shields. Drums pounded. Sansa signaled iron-studded gates to open. Armored Stark troops poured forth with Karstark cavalry wedge. Snow churned crimson. Daenerys, atop the parapet, felt cold wind slice cheeks yet blood thrummed hot. She leapt onto Drogon's back as he swooped low. Arrows clattered off hardened mail, plating riveted along his shoulders. She guided him along enemy rear lines, unleashing controlled gouts that melted icy ground into sucking mud, hampering horse charges. She spared patches where wounded crawled, no needless death. Stannis rallied at center, sword blazing orange from reflection of flames around. He hacked through Karstark spearmen, snow spraying red. Sansa's cousin Lord Torrhen roared challenge, but fell to Stannis' precision stroke. Just as Drogon's shadow swallowed them, Stannis looked up. Their eyes locked, two sovereign wills. Daenerys hesitated, one breath, then steered Drogon aside, scorching only ground near the stag banner. Let the stag live, see better judgment. But Melisandre would not. She hurled a cone of red gold fire into Drogon's path. The dragon shrieked as flame kissed left wing joint, searing softer membrane. Fury thundered through rider and mount. Daenerys angled hard, diving at the red woman. Snow hissed into steam where Drogon's jaws blasted. A wall of flame rose, engulfing Melisandre's horse. Beast shrieked and collapsed. The priestess rolled free, robes ablaze yet ruby blazing brighter, pulsing faster, then shattering with a sound like glass cracked by frost. She emitted a scream that seemed to peel the night open, and in its echo she crumbled to ash, snow carrying remains skyward. A hush rippled over the field. Some men dropped swords, others ran. Stannis stared, eyes wide not with grief but with void. The faith fueling him had vanished in one breath of dragon. He stumbled, sword lowered. Bolton bannermen, seeing there which ally burnt, scattered outright, flinging flayed banners into mud. Stark cavalry surged, lances shattering shields. Within minutes, the Baratheon host lay in ruin. Some kneeling, others dead. A few clinging to Stannis shouting for retreat. The king did not move. He trudged to a drift, knelt, pressing hands into snow as if seeking absolution from frozen earth. Daenerys circled once more, then guided Drogon to land outside outer palisade. She dismounted, boots crunching ice. Sansa approached, half helm off, face streaked with soot but unshaken. "The field is ours," she said. "Your field, won by northern hearts," Daenerys answered. Sansa's blue eyes measured her. "And dragon flame." She looked toward Stannis, now disarmed, guarded by two Karstark men. "Justice for murder of Shireen Baratheon will come." "But what of him?" Daenerys strode across churned snow, stopped before kneeling Stannis. He lifted chin, face lined like cracked marble. "Do it," he rasped. "A king must pay." "I am no headsman," Daenerys said. "I am queen who ends cycles of fire." She turned to Lyra Mormont. "Take him to Castle Black. Let the Night's Watch judge his worth as penance guarding what night still hides." Jon's fairness would decide if Stannis offered any use against wild whites rumored in deep tundra. Lyra saluted. Daenerys returned to Sansa. "The North fought beside me today without oath. Accept my alliance. Let these fallen speak reason to your lords." Sansa surveyed ruined host, steaming bodies, rising smoke. She exhaled. "The North remembers. It must also learn. I will kneel on one condition. The North keeps its right to name its own lord, and if the Iron Throne ever demands a levy of men for wars abroad, consent of Winterfell must be sought." Daenerys offered gloved hand. "I swear by snow and fire," Sansa clasped. "Then the North stands with the Dragon Queen." Words flew like starling flocks. By raven wing, bannermen across winter wastes learned dragons defended Winterfell and spared their sons. By the time Daenerys departed, their sigils streamed behind new convoys of lentils and oats bound south. She left 100 unsullied as honor guard under Grey Worm's deputy Argon, and promised to send masons to rebuild torn walls. In return, Sansa dispatched Maester Wolkan with scrolls pledging fealty. His wax seals stamped direwolf and dragon entwined. Bran watched her mount Drogon in Godswood mist. "The sword without a hilt," he murmured again. She paused. "What does that mean, Green Seer?" "A blade that cuts wielder as easily as foe." His pale eyes saddened. "Beware your dragons, for they are swords without hilts." She nodded solemnly. "I will remember." 2 weeks later, King's Landing bustled again. Tyrell grain ships unloaded at the quays. Their arrival preceded by Lady Olenna's tart message. "If we must embrace dragons, best make stew of it." Gold dragons minted with Daenerys's profile jingled in dockworkers' pouches as they hauled sacks. Dornish envoys rode in bearing chilled citrus and Rhaenys Hill wine, banner of the rising sun at their head. Everywhere red-black flags rippled. Yet in alley shadows rumors still whispered of young Aegon, a hidden Blackfire or some lost babe raised across the sea. Tyrion dismissed them as mummers' tales, but Harry Strickland stiffened whenever he heard the name. Daenerys noted the tells. Seeds of dissent sprout fastest in uncertain soil. Inside the Red Keep, stonecutters patched wildfire-charred walls. Glassmakers installed panes bearing dragon motifs. Unsullied trained new squads of City Watch, stripped of bribes, wearing plain black cloaks with a three-headed sigil. She abolished debtor prisons, freed jailers to guard roads instead, and ordered a census of orphans to place them in trade halls under guild tutelage. A realm that teaches its children eats fewer corpses, she told the Master of Coin, a Tyroshi exile named Rhaenyra who nodded though his eyes bulged at expense. Cersei's Great Council loomed 31 days after trial opened. Lady Olenna arrived, cane tapping with authority. Prince Aerion Martell, amber eyes cool. Lord Randall Tarley despite Tyrell pressure. Wyman Manderley, for carriages of scribes in tow. Yon Royce, House Royce, and Lord Glover from Deepwood Mott, bearing Sansa's proxy. They convened in the half-rebuilt dragon pit under soaring vaults where stone dragons once perched. Tyrion opened proceedings with cat-like grace. Evidence reviewed, votes cast by voice. Only Tarley and 2 Crownlands lords argued for exile. All others demanded death. Daenerys listened but abstained until final count. She rose, surveying the circle of lords, merchants, free captains. The realm calls for justice, then justice shall answer, but mercy may yet teach. She signaled Grey Worm. Cersei was brought forth, chains clinking. Daenerys addressed her. You will die this day, yet choose fire or steel. If fire, dragons consume you now. If steel, you walk to the Sept's ruin and bend knee to young Wolf's headsman, where children despoiled by your wildfire may watch. Cersei's gaze flicked, weighing fates. Dragonfire leaves nothing for ravens, she said. Burn me and be done. Daenerys inclined head. As you choose. Drogon's roar thundered through shattered vaults. In one breath, Cersei Lannister became black shadow, then scattering ash, lifted on updraft through crumbling dome. Silence rang after. Justice delivered to realm's witness, not secret blade. A warning and a promise. Months slipped by, marked by hammers' rings and newborn cries echoing through lighter streets. Tyrell grain fed Crownland orphans. Dornish citrus sweetened docks. Northern lumber repaired ships. The Golden Company, once feared mercenaries, garrisoned the King's Road under Barristan's oversight, winning grudging trust. Lords paraded to swear fealty. Daenerys named a council of mixed bloods. Tyrion Hand, Missandei Mistress of Laws, Wyman Manderley Master of Ships, Aerion Martell Mistress of Whispers, and a new Grand Maester from Old Town chosen for healing skill over politics. Yet storms gathered beyond lantern glow. Ironborn sails were sighted along Fair Isle. Euron Greyjoy prophesied dream-gifted krakens, threatening to seize Casterly Rock now weakened. In the east, slavers of Yunkai plotted to retake Meereen while dragons roost far away. In the Reach, Randall Tarley trained bowmen not wholly loyal. And in taverns from Gulltown to Sunspear, balladeers sang of young Griff, a Valyrian-looking youth with a pale dragon banner, landing at Storm's End perhaps to claim Rhaegar's lost line. Harry Strickland begged private audience, confessing his company once guarded that boy. He feared an oath half-forgotten might split their ranks. Daenerys listened, felt ghosts gather again. If a prince comes bearing true blood, she said, let the realm decide by peace, not war. Invite him to council. But she also prepared, reforged scorpion bolts in obsidian, trained Drogon and brothers to avoid them, drilled unsullied in street-to-street maneuver. A sword without a hilt, her dragons, must be sheathed in wisdom lest it wound her hand. One still dawn, she climbed the highest tower above the rebuilt throne room. Sea breeze tousled silver-gold hair. Gulls cried overhead. Far below, the city teemed. Bakers shouting, blacksmiths singing, children laughing. Smoke from cook fires coiled upward, mingling with salt and sun. She closed eyes, imagining Rhaegar's harp strumming in gentle halls never burned. Then she opened them, grip tightening on stone. The realm would never be done testing her. Each dawn would ask anew whether dragonfire served justice or doom. But she would meet those dawns with mercy tempered by iron, heart anchored by lessons carved in wildfire scars, griffin circles, and foxfur nights in Winterfell. Behind her, Drogon's shadow glided over the city like a dark cloak, yet its edges softened where sunlight kissed scale. Children below pointed skyward, not in terror but wonder. Perhaps, she thought, that was victory enough for one steady breath, the simple miracle of people looking up at a dragon and finding hope instead of fear. And so Daenerys Stormborn, mother of dragons, queen of the Undulls, Rhoynar, and First Men, protector of the realm, closed her eyes again, breathed deep of sea and smoke, and stepped forward into the endless work of peace, determined that this fire, hers, would build, not break, the realm she had crossed half a world to claim.